Part 1, The Return. When Lena stepped off the train onto the platform of her hometown, her heart clenched without warning. It had been 7 years since she left for Moscow. 7 years of rebuilding her life from scratch, of cutting ties, of trying to forget. But the past had claws, and it never let go so easily. It still lived in that peeling 2-story house with the creaky green gate, still smelled of borscht, cheap perfume, and years of silent expectation. And now she was back. The train station looked exactly the same. Quiet, half asleep in the early morning mist. Nothing had changed. The same kiosks lined the sidewalk. The pharmacy across the street still had the same flickering sign. And even the old woman sitting on the bench looked like a ghost from her memories. But Lena was different now. Gone were the days of oversized sweaters and trembling hands. Now she wore a tailored coat, carried a rolling suitcase, and wore a look that screamed control, even if she didn't feel it inside. As she exited the platform, she checked her phone. One new message from her younger sister. Katya, are you sure about this? Mom's not the same. Lena didn't reply. She hadn't spoken to her mother in 3 years. Not since the fight. Not since the words that couldn't be unsaid. The night when everything between them snapped like dry branches. She had buried that night deep, under work, under people, under years. But when she got the call from Katya 2 days ago, her voice trembling with urgency, the ground beneath that burial site shifted. She's not well. The doctors found something. And she's asking about you. It was enough to book a train ticket. Enough to bring her home. The cab ride from the station was mercifully short. Trees lined the streets like familiar sentinels, watching her silently through the glass. With every turn, her chest tightened, breath shortening. She wasn't ready. Not for this. Not for the peeling paint on the fence. Not for the dead vines crawling up the bricks. Not for the memories buried in the floorboards of the house she ran from. The car stopped. She stared at the green gate for a long moment before finally stepping out. The driver said something, but she didn't hear him. Her fingers touched the latch, cold and rough with rust. It groaned as it opened. Katya opened the door before Lena could knock. She looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but in a deeper way, like someone who had been carrying something heavy for far too long. Her once bright eyes were shadowed, her blonde hair tied back in a messy knot. You came, Katya said, voice small. Of course I did, Lena replied, though she didn't believe her own words. They hugged, awkwardly, the kind of hug shared by people who used to be close but now didn't know how to fit their pieces together. She's in her room, mostly sleeping these days, Katya said as she led Lena through the hallway. The house smelled the same, like boiled potatoes, lavender, and something else. Something bitter. They passed the old living room, still stuffed with knickknacks, old photos, dusty curtains. On the wall hung the family portrait Lena hated. Her as a teenager, her arms crossed, her father with a cigarette half out of frame, her mother's forced smile, and Katya beaming like she didn't know how close things were to falling apart. Are you okay? Katya asked gently. Lena stared at the photo. Do you remember the day that picture was taken? Katya nodded. Mom burned the roast. You locked yourself in the bathroom. Dad left right after it was done. Lena gave a soft, humorless laugh. Yeah, the perfect portrait. When Lena stepped into the bedroom, she almost didn't recognize the woman in the bed. Her mother had always been larger than life. She'd filled rooms with her voice, her opinions, her rage. Now she looked small, shrinking into the pillows, pale, breathing shallowly. Tubes and wires ran to machines that beeped quietly in the corner. Lena stood frozen. She's been asking for you, Katya whispered behind her. Lena slowly approached. Her mother's eyes fluttered open, cloudy, unfocused for a moment, then suddenly alert. You're here, she rasped. Lena swallowed. I'm here. 1,000 things could have been said at that moment. Apologies, accusations, questions, but neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt heavy and old. Later that night, Lena lay in her childhood bedroom, the ceiling familiar and alien all at once. The wallpaper was the same, peeling slightly at the edges. Her desk was still cluttered with old notebooks and cassette tapes. Time had stood still in this room, even as she had sprinted ahead in the outside world. From the hallway, she could hear Katia pacing. Whispers on the phone. A door creaking. Their mother coughing. Lena turned on her side, staring into the dark. She wasn't sure if she came back to help her mother or to find closure. Maybe both. Maybe neither. But one thing she did know. Something was broken in this house long before her mother got sick. And maybe, just maybe, this was her last chance to figure out what and whether it could ever be fixed. Part 2, Cracks Beneath the Surface. The next morning came slowly. Lena awoke to the soft creak of the house stretching itself awake. A sound she had long forgotten but recognized instantly. Wooden floors whispered beneath footsteps. A kettle hissed in the kitchen. And behind it all, a deeper hum. Something in the walls, in the bones of the house, that never stopped vibrating with tension. She sat up in the narrow bed, rubbing her temples. Sleep had been shallow and fractured. Her mind was crowded with old voices, with memories that refused to stay buried. She dreamed of her father again. His back as he walked out the door, keys in hand, never once looking back. Downstairs, she found Katia at the stove. "Coffee?" her sister asked without turning. Lena nodded. "Please." Strong. They sat in silence for a moment, each holding their mugs like shields. The kitchen was brighter than she remembered. Katia had painted the walls a pale blue, and the old cracked tiles had been replaced. But the table was the same, scarred with years of dinners, arguments, laughter, and slammed fists. "She had a rough night," Katia said, stirring sugar into her cup. "Barely slept. Asked about you twice." Lena looked down at the swirling black liquid in her mug. "What does she want from me, Katia? We didn't exactly part on good terms." Katia sighed. "Maybe to say goodbye." The words sat heavy between them. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Lena asked after a moment. "I did. A few times. You never responded." Lena winced. That was true. She had seen Katia's messages. Some days she read them and wept. Other days she ignored them with practiced detachment. It had been easier to pretend that nothing back here mattered anymore. She was angry for a long time, Len, but after Dad left, after everything, she softened. Life did that to her. Softened. Lena almost laughed. "The woman who once threw a plate at my head for staying out past curfew?" Katia gave her a tired look. People change. Or maybe they just get too tired to fight. That afternoon, Lena sat with her mother again. This time, her mother was more awake, her eyes sharper, though her body still looked fragile beneath the blankets. "You cut your hair," her mother said, voice raspy. Lena blinked. 4 years ago. "It suits you." They sat in silence. A different silence than before, less sharp, more uncertain. "You didn't come for the funeral," her mother said. Lena stiffened. "I was in Singapore, on a job." Her mother turned her head slowly. "You didn't call, not even a text." "He wasn't exactly a model parent," Lena said, more coldly than she meant to. "He left us. Left you. He was broken," her mother murmured. "Just like me. Just like all of us." Lena wanted to argue, to remind her of the shouting, the drinking, the endless days of tension. But instead, she looked at her mother's hands, now thin and veined, once so firm and commanding. "We were never good at being a family," Lena said quietly. "No," her mother agreed, "but I wanted to be." That night, Lena wandered into the attic. Something had pulled her there, curiosity, nostalgia, maybe guilt. The hatch creaked as she pushed it open, dust swirling in the beam of her flashlight. Everything was where it had always been. Boxes of Christmas decorations, old photo albums, school projects, and in the far corner a trunk, her father's. She hesitated. Her fingers brushed over the metal clasps, cold and stiff. With a click, the trunk opened. Inside were things she hadn't seen in years. His leather jacket, a stack of records, a pack of unopened cigarettes, and at the bottom a notebook. She opened it slowly. Pages filled with sketches, notes, scribbled thoughts, drawings of houses, streets, strange mechanical contraptions. One page had a list. Things I did wrong. Lena's breath caught. I left too soon. I loved her too loudly. I didn't listen to Lena. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I broke the only things that mattered. She closed the book with shaking hands. When she came back downstairs, Katia was waiting in the hallway. "Did you go up there?" Katia asked. Lena nodded. "His stuff is still there." Katia looked at her, something unreadable in her expression. "You know, he came back. Once. After you left." "What?" 3 years ago. Right after his cancer diagnosis. He stood outside the gate. Talked to Mom for hours. But he wouldn't come in. Said he didn't deserve to. Lena felt the air leave her lungs. "He left a letter for you," Katia added. "But Mom never sent it. Said you wouldn't care." Lena clenched her fists. "Do you still have it?" Katia nodded. "I'll find it." That night, Lena lay awake, the weight of the notebook and the unspoken words pressing into her chest like stones. She had spent years blaming them, her parents, the town, the past. But now, the edges of those memories were blurring. Nothing was as simple as she'd convinced herself it was. Outside the window, the wind moved through the trees like whispers. Maybe Katia was right. Maybe they had all been broken in their own ways. But if there was still time to pick up the pieces, even just a few of them, maybe that's why she had come back after all. Part 3. Letters Never Sent. The next morning brought rain. It tapped against the kitchen window like fingers asking to be let in. Lena sat at the table with her coffee, watching droplets trace slow paths down the glass. Katia placed a folded envelope beside her, silent and almost reverent, as if laying down a fragile artifact. "This is it," Katia said. "The letter." Lena hesitated before touching it. The paper was worn at the edges, soft from being held too many times. Her name was written on the front in her father's messy, slanted handwriting. Lena. No date. No greeting. She opened it slowly. "I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if you'd care. But I need to say it whether it reaches you or not. I was wrong. About a lot of things. You were never the problem. You were the mirror. And I couldn't stand what I saw when I looked at you. Your strength. Your questions. Your refusal to pretend. I thought leaving would stop the cycle. I thought you'd be better off without me. But you weren't. And neither was I. I watched you grow up in fragments, stories from Katia, whispers from your mother, a few glimpses on social media. You looked happy. But I knew that face. It was mine too. I'm sorry I wasn't better. I'm sorry I didn't stay. But I never stopped being proud of you. Never. Dad." Lena stared at the page long after her eyes stopped moving. Her chest was tight, her throat dry. She had waited so long for words like these, had imagined them, cursed them, cried over their absence. And now that they were in her hands, it felt almost unbearable. "I found it in her drawer," Katia said softly. "I think she read it. A lot." Lena didn't speak. She folded the letter and held it tightly in both hands, as if afraid it might dissolve. Later, she sat beside her mother again. This time, she didn't wait for permission to speak. "I read his letter," she said quietly. "The one he wrote to me." Her mother's eyes opened slowly. "I wasn't sure you'd want it. I needed it." Silence. "He was a coward," her mother whispered, voice fraying at the edges. "But he loved you. God help me. I think he loved you more than he ever knew how to show." Lena nodded. "I think I was angry at both of you. For so long." "I know," her mother said. "You had every right." Lena looked at her mother's face, softer now, almost translucent in the morning light. There was a fragility there that frightened her. Not just from illness, but from years of holding in too much and saying too little. "Why did you keep it from me?" she asked. Her mother closed her eyes for a moment. "Because I was afraid you'd forgive him, and I wasn't ready for that." The days blurred after that. Rain gave way to sun. Nurses came and went. Medications changed. Her mother slept more, spoke less. Katia did everything. Cooked, called doctors, paid bills. Lena offered to help, and Katia accepted, though the roles they had once played, older sister, younger shadow, were now reversed in strange ways. One afternoon, while sorting through papers in the living room, Lena found another photo album tucked beneath the couch cushions. It was newer. Inside were photos she had never seen. Katia at university. Their mother alone at a cafe. Their father, older, balder, standing awkwardly in front of a hospital. Tucked in the back was a picture that made Lena stop. It was her at age 24, on a stage in Moscow mid-speech. Taken from the audience. She had no idea who took it, but someone in this house had cared enough to keep it. She turned to Katia, who stood in the doorway, drying her hands on a towel. "Did Mom take this?" Katia shook her head. "Dad. He came to one of your conferences. Sat way in the back. Didn't tell anyone." Lena stared at the image, her heart an aching drumbeat. "I wish he'd said something." Katia nodded. He didn't know how. That evening, Lena walked through the neighborhood. The streets were as she remembered. Cracked sidewalks, overgrown gardens, the occasional barking dog. She passed the old playground where she and Katia used to fight over the swings. The schoolyard fence, still rusted in the same spot. Everything was frozen in time, yet she had changed so much that it felt like a museum exhibit, her own childhood behind glass. She sat on a bench across from the pharmacy, watching people come and go. Parents, teenagers, elderly women with bags of bread. Life kept moving whether you were ready or not. A woman passed with a toddler. The child tripped, began to cry. The mother bent down, whispered something, kissed her head, and the crying stopped. Lena swallowed hard. She remembered none of that from her own childhood. Not because it hadn't happened, maybe, but because she had stopped looking for it. She had built walls around her pain so high no light could get in. When she returned to the house, she found Katia on the phone in the hallway, whispering. "She's not eating again," Katia said. "I know. Yes, I'll try the new meds tomorrow." Lena waited until she hung up. "I'll stay," Lena said, "as long as I'm needed." Katia looked at her, surprised. "You don't have to. I know you have work." "I want to." For the first time in days, Katia smiled. A real one. Then, "Thank you." That night, as Lena lay in bed, her mind wandered to the photo again. Her father had been there, in the shadows, watching. Maybe that's what love was, sometimes. Silent, clumsy, incomplete, but present in the ways it could be. She closed her eyes and breathed. Tomorrow she would sit with her mother again. Ask questions. Say things she should have said years ago. There was still time, even if only a little. And sometimes even a little time could change everything. Part 4. The Unspoken Years. Lena woke up before dawn. The house was silent, the kind of silence that didn't come from peace, but from the weight of everything left unsaid. She made her way to the kitchen barefoot, the tiles cool under her feet. As the coffee brewed, she opened the small wooden cabinet where the medicine was kept. Dozens of pill bottles lined the shelves, some half-empty, some never touched. Names she couldn't pronounce. Instructions she couldn't pretend to understand. Katia appeared behind her, rubbing her eyes. "You don't have to do the morning shift." "I couldn't sleep." Katia gave her a tired smile. "Me neither." They drank coffee in silence again. But this time, there was no tension. Just two women carrying the same load, side by side. "She asked about you again," Katia said. "Last night." Lena looked down at her mug. "What did she say?" "She asked if you still hated her." The words were a blade wrapped in cotton. "I don't know what I feel anymore," Lena admitted. "It's all tangled up. Anger, sadness, love maybe, guilt, definitely guilt." "She feels it too," Katia said. "More than she knows how to say." Later that morning, Lena sat by her mother's bed again. A beam of light filtered through the curtains, casting faint lines across the blanket. Her mother was awake, barely. Her skin had grown paler, her breathing shallower. "I was never ready for this," Lena said softly. "For coming back. for facing it. Her mother's lips moved slowly. None of us were. You hurt me, Lena said, her voice steady but low. You hurt all of us. But I think you were hurting too. Her mother's eyes glistened. A tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't know how to raise daughters, she whispered. I only knew how to survive. Lena reached out and took her hand. Thin, cold, trembling. You did what you could, and maybe it wasn't enough. But I'm here now. They sat like that, hands clasped, hearts open for the first time in years. The following days passed slowly, like breathing through fog. Some days were better. Her mother would be lucid for a few minutes, smiling faintly, asking about small things. What Lena ate in Moscow, how Katia's garden was doing, if the curtains had been changed in the living room. Other days she barely stirred. Lena and Katia fell into a quiet rhythm. They took turns feeding her, changing her, reading aloud when she was too tired to speak. They cooked together, folded laundry, talked about memories like people digging through ashes, looking for something unburnt. You remember that summer we built a tent in the backyard? Katia asked one evening, holding a bowl of soup. Yeah, Lena smiled. We tried to sleep outside. Dad scared us with stories about wolves. Katia laughed. I peed myself. You told me I was disgusting. You were, Lena teased. But then her smile faded. I didn't mean it. I was just scared too. Katia looked at her with gentle eyes. You always acted brave, even when you weren't. I had to, Lena said. Someone had to. On the fourth night, their mother called out in her sleep. Vitya, she murmured. Don't leave. Not again. Lena sat up in the armchair beside her bed. She hadn't heard that name, her father's full name, in years. She leaned forward. Mom. Her mother blinked awake slowly, disoriented. It's me, Lena. For a moment, her mother stared as if unsure whether the face in front of her was real. Then, I thought he'd come back. I thought he'd stay. He tried, Lena said gently. At the end, he really did. I was cruel, her mother whispered. To him, to you girls. I thought keeping the pain close would protect me from more. Lena swallowed. Did you ever love him? A long silence. More than I could admit, especially to him. The next morning, Katia brought a box into the living room. I think it's time you saw this, she said. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to their mother. Some open, some not, all from their father. He kept writing, Katia said. Even after you left. After he left. She never replied. But she kept them. Lena opened one at random. The handwriting was Messier, more rushed than the first letter. Inside, he wrote about mundane things, his apartment, a movie he watched, the way coffee tasted in the morning without anyone across the table. But between the lines, it was clear he missed them. All of them. He was never good with feelings, Katia said. But he didn't stop trying. Lena read 3 letters in a row before she had to stop. Her chest ached in places she had ignored for years. I wish I could talk to him, she said. Just once more. I think you are, Katia said. By being here. That night, as they sat beside their mother once again, Lena brought in one of the letters. She didn't say anything, just began to read. As her voice filled the quiet room, their mother's eyes fluttered open. Tears welled up but didn't fall. I thought I hated him, she whispered. But I hated being left. We all did, Lena said. But maybe we all left each other. In different ways. Her mother looked at her, a flicker of something in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or relief. Forgive me, she said. If you can. Lena didn't hesitate. I already have. Part 5. The quiet before goodbye. It was a Monday when the air in the house changed. Lena felt it the moment she stepped into the hallway. The usual quiet wasn't just soft now, it was hollow, like something had been taken. A pressure shift, a silence with edges. She found Katia in their mother's room, sitting on the bed, her hand wrapped tightly around their mother's fingers. The older woman's chest moved in shallow, uneven breaths. Her skin had gone almost translucent, her lips dry and barely parted. "She's not waking up anymore?" Katia said softly, not turning. "She hasn't said anything since last night." Lena stood in the doorway, her pulse roaring in her ears. She had known this was coming. They both had. But knowing didn't soften the blow. "She waited for you," Katia added. "I think she's still waiting." Lena stepped forward, sat beside the bed, and took her mother's other hand. It was so light, almost like it wasn't part of this world anymore. The next few hours passed like fog. Nurses came and went. The doctor stopped by, quiet and professional. Morphine was administered. Pain was managed. But Lena could tell the pain had moved somewhere beyond the reach of medication. This wasn't about the body anymore. It was about release. She sat by the window and watched her sister care for their mother with quiet strength. Katia, who had been the baby of the family, the one who always clung to Lena's arm in thunderstorms, was now the anchor, calm, capable, unshakable. Lena admired her in a way she never had before. Maybe she never allowed herself to. "She's holding on," Katia said in the afternoon. "But I don't know for how much longer." Lena nodded. Her throat ached. She left the room for a moment to breathe. She walked through the house slowly, touching the backs of chairs, the edges of picture frames, the handle of the door to the garden. Every inch of this place held echoes. Some good, some painful, all of them real. In the hallway, she stopped at the old family portrait. She stared at it for a long time. Then she took it off the wall. She brought it back into the bedroom, set it on the table beside the bed. Her mother's eyes were closed, but her breathing shifted slightly, as if sensing its presence. "You used to hate that photo," Katia said. "I still do," Lena replied. But now, as she looked at it again, her teenage scowl, her father's detached expression, her mother's strained smile, she saw something else. Family trying. Failing, perhaps, but trying. "Maybe it's not about what we were," Lena said, "but what we wanted to be." Katia looked at her, surprised by the softness in her voice. Lena leaned down and whispered into her mother's ear. "You weren't perfect, but I saw you trying. And that means something now. It really does." A single tear slid down her mother's cheek. As the sun dipped below the trees outside, the light in the room turned golden. Everything looked softer, less defined. The ticking of the old clock on the wall slowed, or maybe time itself did. Lena held her mother's hand and began to hum a tune she hadn't thought of in years. A lullaby, one her mother used to sing when they were small and couldn't sleep. Katia joined in, her voice shaky at first, but steadying. They sang until their voices faded into stillness. And in that stillness, their mother took her last breath. She didn't make a sound.
No gasp, no struggle.
Just a long, gentle exhale. And then nothing. Katia's shoulders collapsed. She didn't cry right away. Neither did Lena. There was too much silence to fill first. They stayed with her for hours, talking, remembering, letting the moment stretch as far as it needed. Outside, the first stars appeared. The wind rustled the trees. Inside, something had shifted forever. The days that followed passed in rituals. Phone calls, arrangements, visitors. People Lena hadn't seen in years came by the house. Neighbors, old friends, even a cousin she barely remembered. They all spoke in the same gentle tone, said the same things. She was strong. She loved you girls so much. She'd be proud of you. Some words rang true, others rang hollow, but Lena accepted them all with grace. She and Katia sorted through their mother's things. Some were easy to give away. Others, jewelry, letters, old scarves, were harder. They found a sealed envelope addressed to both of them. Her mother's handwriting, shakier than it had been even weeks before. "My girls, I'm sorry I never learned how to love you the way you needed. I tried in the only way I knew. I carried too much anger, too many ghosts. I see that now. But I want you to know I loved you. Every moment, even the worst ones. I hope one day when you think of me it won't be with pain. I hope you'll smile. Be better than I was. Be softer with yourselves than I was with you. Don't run from family. Fix what can be fixed. and forgive what can't. Mom. Lena read it twice, then again. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her suitcase. On the morning of the funeral, the sky was overcast. Rain threatened, but never came. People gathered in black, umbrellas in hand, but no one opened them. Lena stood beside Katia, watching the casket lowered slowly, gently, like the end of a song. Priests spoke. People wept. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves overhead. When it was over, Katia turned to her. Are you going back to Moscow? Lena looked at her, at the town behind her, at the gravestone in front of her. Not yet, she said. There's more to do here. Part 6, What Remains. Weeks passed. Grief didn't leave. It simply settled, softer around the edges, like dust. The house no longer echoed like a tomb. It breathed again, slowly. Lena didn't rush back to Moscow. Her suitcase stayed untouched. Each morning, she woke early, made coffee for 2, even though only 1 cup was needed. It was her way of remembering, of honoring, of healing. Katia took time off from work. Together, they mended the garden, cleaned out closets, repainted the kitchen their mother always said she hated but never got around to changing. The walls went from a tired beige to a warm sunflower yellow. It changed the light in the whole house. I think she would have liked this, Katia said one afternoon, holding a paintbrush. Yeah, Lena smiled. But she would have still complained about the brush strokes. They both laughed. And that laughter, that quiet, shared, exhausted kind, felt like the start of something real. On Sunday, they took a walk through town. Lena saw everything with new eyes. The park bench where her father used to smoke. The bookstore where her mother bought her first novel. The cracked sidewalk that once tripped Katia and split her knee open. The town hadn't changed, but she had. The bitterness she carried wasn't gone. But it was lighter now. Something she could set down when she chose. One evening, as twilight painted the windows blue, Lena sat in the living room holding the family portrait. It was still crooked in its frame, still awkward, but this time she saw something else. Survival. A family not defined by perfection, but by the fact that they kept showing up, even when broken. She placed the photo back on the wall, then joined Katia on the porch, where the first stars had begun to appear. I think I'll stay, she said. Katia nodded, her voice quiet. You already are.